Christians are not distinguished from the rest of humanity by country, language, or custom. For nowhere do they live in cities of their own, nor do they speak some unusual dialect, nor do they practice an eccentric lifestyle. This teaching of theirs has not been discovered by the thought and reflection of ingenious men, nor do they promote any human doctrine as some do. But while they live in both Greek and barbarian cities, as each one's lot was cast, and follow the local customs in dress and food and other aspects of life, at the same time they demonstrate the remarkable and admittedly unusual character of their own citizenship. They live in their own countries, but only as aliens. They participate in everything as citizens and enjoy everything as foreigners. Every foreign country is their fatherland, and every fatherland is foreign. They marry like everyone else and have children, but they do not expose their offspring. They share their food, but not their wives. They are in the flesh, but they do not live according to the flesh. They live on earth, but their citizenship is in heaven. They obey the established laws. Indeed, in their private lives, they transcend the laws. They love everyone, and by everyone they are persecuted. They are unknown, yet they are condemned. They are put to death, yet they are brought to life. They are poor, yet they make many rich. They are in need of everything, yet they abound in everything. They are dishonored, yet they are glorified in their dishonor. They are slandered, yet they are vindicated. They are cursed, yet they bless. They are insulted, yet they offer respect. When they do good, they are punished as evildoers. When they are punished, they rejoice as though brought to life. By the Jews they are assaulted as foreigners, and by the Greeks they are persecuted. Yet those who hate them are unable to give a reason for their hostility. Hi, I'm Mike Bird, and those words are taken from chapter 5 of the Epistle to Diognetus. Now, the Epistle to Diognetus is a 2nd century apologetic work with a short sermon spliced on at the end. It's ordinarily dated to the late 2nd century. The strange thing, though, is that the document is never once mentioned by anyone in antiquity. Nobody mentions it or even quotes it. We don't know anything about its author, its origins, or who the intended addressee, one Diognetus, even is. That said, it's a remarkable work which engages in a polemic against the worship of both Jews and pagans. It offers a glowing panegyric of praise to Christians as a distinct people. It's got a very strong and robust Christology of incarnation. It provides an eloquent description of God's power in salvation and engages in a moving exhortation about the imitation of God. It is, to be honest, my favorite piece of Christian writing outside the New Testament. It's a piece of Christian literature filled with great depth and pathos. And in this episode of Ancient Texts and Traditions, I'm going to summarize it for you and tell you why it's definitely worth a read. So where did this document come from? Unfortunately, we know next to nothing about the author, the recipient named Diognetus, the history of the text, and its circulation in the early church. The Epistle to Diognetus is never mentioned by any authors of the patristic or medieval period, so we're completely in the dark as to where it came from. What we do know is that a manuscript containing the Epistle to Diognetus was allegedly discovered in a fishmonger shop in Constantinople in 1436. The manuscript was dated to the 13th or 14th century, and the Epistle to Diognetus was there in the manuscript, located at the end of a series of works by Justin Martyr. The manuscript was eventually taken to France and was first published in 1592. Sadly, however, the manuscript containing the Epistle to Diognetus was destroyed during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. The Greek text is now preserved only in transcriptions made by several scholars. So what is the Epistle to Diognetus actually about? Well, the document commences with a prologue which sets out the 3 questions which is addressed in the work. The first question is, what God do the Christians believe in and worship? Second, what is the nature of their love for each other? And then thirdly, Why has this peculiar people with their peculiar way of life suddenly emerged? That's basically what the document is addressing. After that, there is a dual critique of both pagan idol worship, but also a critique of the Jerusalem cultus and the ceremonial laws of the Jews. Now, to be honest, the anti-Judaistic stuff is not particularly convincing, but it's simply part of patristic literature of that time. Next, the author proceeds to praise Christians for their exemplary way of life and their positive influence upon the world. Then there's a celebration of God's providence and the sending of God's word into the world to save the world. Next, there's an exposition of God's purposes and power and salvation. And after that, it's claimed that faith leads to knowledge, knowledge leads to love, and love is a very imitation of the goodness of God. The work closes with a short appendix, probably not original to the work, but includes a very interesting and elegant exposition of the incarnation, the Logos becoming human, and it offers an allegorical interpretation of the two trees planted in the Garden of Eden taken from Genesis chapter 2. So that in a nutshell is what the book covers and what is in the Epistle to Diognetus. In regards to the major themes in the Epistle to Diognetus, there's several we could talk about. Let me just focus on two: Christology and salvation. First, in terms of Christology, there is one kind of strange aspect to the work, in that the name Jesus and the title Christ are never once used. It never talks about Jesus or Christ. That said, there is a big emphasis on the word coming into the world. So kind of like the prologue to John's Gospel. The author says that God's chief agent is not an angelic being, but it is instead the holy, incomprehensible word from heaven, who is sent as a son who is a king, like his father who is a king, his only begotten son who comes as God and as human. As such, the coming of the Son is also the very coming of God. And as God's beloved child, he receives the divine plan for salvation and he transmits it to the church, rendering the child, the Son of God, both the bearer and content of God's plan for salvation. And this is a Christology that sounds very Johannine, very much like the Christology of the fourth Gospel, but also a little bit like the Christology of Justin Martyr, one of the apologists from the mid-2nd century. Second, in regards to salvation, in the narration of this document, humans need to be saved from the season of unrighteousness, where they were captive to wicked impulses, their lawlessness, and the real death of eternal fire. God's solution to all that is a great and marvelous plan where salvation comes by God's power through faith in the Son of God alone. And this salvation, it means redemption. It means justification. In fact, the author gets very, very close to describing a model of substitutionary atonement in terms of what the cross achieves. It sounds like he's really accenting the exchange that takes place on the cross. Just listen to these words. Listen to this. He himself experienced our sin. He himself gave his own son a ransom on our behalf, the holy for the lawless, the innocent for the guilty, the righteous for the unrighteous, the incorruptible for the corruptible, the immortal for the mortal. For what else than that one's righteousness could cover up our sin? In who else other than the Son of God alone could our lawlessness and ungodliness possibly be justified? Oh, the sweet exchange. Oh, the fathomless creation. Oh, the unexpected benefits that the lawlessness of many should be concealed in the righteous one, and the righteousness of the one should justify the many lawless people. Now, at the risk of anachronism, one could venture to say that there's much here that resonates with, really strong Reformed theological motives. You've got salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, and in Christ alone. So far, I think we've seen and heard some very interesting stuff from the Epistle to Diognetus. It's very powerful, very elegant. It's got a great way of framing things or describing God, the incarnation, and the Christian life. And I would conclude that, notwithstanding the mystery of its origins, authorship, and the addressee, the Epistle to Diognetus is a powerful piece of Christian apologetic literature. It defines the Christian people over against the practices of the Greco-Roman world. It identifies Christians as having a positive role in the world as a distinct people. It offers a moving testimony to God's purposes and love. It narrates a rich account of the incarnation. It majors on the motif of divine love. It's got a poignant image of justification by faith, resulting from a sweet exchange of the righteous for the unrighteous, and it exhorts readers towards the imitation of God. Even the sermon appended at the end has a memorable summary of God's word coming into the world to bring knowledge of God's love. I mean, it's really a shame, if you ask me, that this document was lost or forgotten for most of church history. One can only imagine how it would have been interpreted or utilized by someone like an Athanasius and Augustine, an Abelard, or an Aquinas. And despite its, quite frankly, tendentious dismissal of Judaism, the glaring absence of quotations from the Old Testament, and its lack of interest in the Holy Spirit, despite that, the author's core convictions about God, the Son, and salvation are some of the most exquisite or sublime expositions of the Christian faith you can find in all of 2nd century literature. So, check out the Epistle to Diognetus. You won't be disappointed. I'm Mike Bird, and thank you for watching this episode of Ancient Texts and Traditions. If you like the Epistle to Diognetus and you want to learn more about the rest of the Apostolic Fathers, then I suggest you check out the book I co-edited with Scott Harrower called The Cambridge Companion to the Apostolic Fathers. That's a terrific book that includes a whole bunch of essays by leading international scholars about this amazing collection of Christian writings. And if you're enjoying the content, please, like, subscribe, leave a comment or question. Let me know what you found interesting or what you'd like me to cover in the future. Otherwise, I hope to see you around the channel and for the next episode of Ancient Text and Traditions.